Welcome to UX Banter Season 7, where design leaders, innovators, and change makers share their stories, insights, and passion for human centered experiences. This season, we are exploring AI driven design, inclusive UX, enterprise strategy, and the evolving role of designers in a rapidly changing world. I'm your host, Dushyant Kanungo. This podcast is presented by Galaxy UX Studio and powered by Galaxy Weblinks, an Inc. 5000 company. Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of season 7 of the UX Banter podcast. I am your host, Dushyant Kanungo, and our guest today brings over 12 years of experience building thoughtful, scalable digital experiences across product design, visual systems, and creative leadership. His work focuses on translating complex requirements into clear, user centered solutions that balance creative vision with real business impact. He currently leads multidisciplinary design teams on large scale digital products, driving UI strategy, design systems, and cross functional collaboration. His portfolio spans enterprise platforms, global web experiences, and branded systems for well known organizations where clarity, consistency, and usability are central to every solution. Please welcome Associate Creative Director at Level Studios, Michael Miller. Hey, Michael, welcome to the show.
Hi, thanks so much. Honored to be here.
So, you always been part of the art and you did music festivals and you started a studio in Portland. What happened after?
So while I was working at the studio, I was working with graphic design on the side. So working freelance with various different clients while also building up our back end and website and a lot of video editing for our own company at the same time. And I really found kind of a groove with working both of those different industries simultaneously. One being in the marketing side of everything with experiential design, really connecting with the user base, but in a way that's different than how I do now, of course. So really finding what people are passionate about, how to engage them in a live experience, and what brings people down into these immersive environments specifically. In addition to that, working on the side through various different clients in graphic design, working in promotional assets, web builds, and a lot of like merchandising. And I
Mhm.
really found that there was commonality with my systems organization and the way that I liked to design versus how I saw other designers in the industry. So really finding a lot of organizational practices really handy. And that translated really easily into sidestepping into product design. So around the time where COVID-19 happened, I really found ourselves, my partner and I wanted to close the business due to the industry and just the collapse of the music scene in general in Portland at the
Mhm.
time. So it was really kind of a natural sidestep to move into web design and product design. I reschooled, skilled up through various different online resources, and then found myself working in digital marketing shortly after that.
Wow, quite a journey. So, when you say that you moved to product design, how your focus evolved over the years?
That's a great question. So when I first entered the industry, it was really more artistic focused, more design focused. So still kind of dancing that balance between print and web design. And today it's all digital right now for what I do. And I really found a groove with systems organization and management. So managing design systems, working with like file structures, managing everything from like an atomic perspective and making sure that it's communicated to our team clearly. So our UX team has everything they need, our product and dev team have everything they need, and the system is really clearly organized so anybody can kind of jump in and get started right away.
Nice. So, if I take it clearly, you are a Power Figma user, and
I aspire to be. Yeah.
so, do you think that any work that you've done previously in marketing and the music festival sites and the creative work, does that link in any way or attribute towards the work that you're doing right now? Because coming from different domains, it's always a challenge, but you always have some takeaways from the previous experience. So, how does that translate into the current work?
Yeah, it's a great question. And I'd say like there's more parallels than I would have ever imagined between the two. The biggest one probably is client relations, and this even goes all the way back to college and majoring in communications. It was communication design, but at the time it didn't feel like it would really apply in the way that it has throughout my career. But I found the through line is really the person experience, the personable, relation point that you find within each person. So whether or not that's the end user, whether or not that's the client that you're selling your thing to at the moment, really finding like what makes people tick, what they're passionate about, and leveraging that whenever you're trying to relate to them, sell something to them, or just get them inspired.
Hmm. So, what does your current role entail in a short summary?
Right now, so I manage a team of a few designers for our product side of the house. So we work on an internal client team for a telecom company. They will remain nameless for now, but they're a smaller company that has been around for several years, mostly East Coast specific. And we manage all of their web experience and their purchasing process, and then also their account management web portal for your users who sign up for their service. So our job as UI designers is to manage the back end portion of that for the dev team. So all the visual assets, organize all the layouts, the web pages, and the entire system to keep things organized for the product team to be able to communicate clearly what's needed to be translated into the live experience.
How important do you think that the business understanding side comes to play when you're working with enterprise grade user experience for a very specified domain as a product designer?
Do you mean the business side of like telecom, for instance?
Yeah, I mean, let's talk about telecom. How closely should the designer come to understanding that what the business is doing in very technical terms? I mean,
Yeah, that's also a great question. I find myself over the years, so this has been about 3.5 years now that I've been here for this specific client and company.
mhm.
And I've learned a lot more than I ever expected to learn about the telecom industry. And it is important. I think like really what we're doing here as digital marketers is we're showing up in a different way than maybe we'd be used to from like shows like Mad Men or traditional marketing. We're not showing up in these like fast kind of like ad hoc pitches to the client as often as we are working with them integrally, becoming not subject matter experts necessarily for telecom, but really working closely with the subject matter experts and even the product team experts who know the ins and outs of the industry and what's trending right now. Like what other companies are doing. That's very important for all of us to know, both on our side of the house and on the client side. And understanding what works to sell not only to the customer base, but also what's working out in the web experience for users when they're online purchasing or just kind of looking for internet.
I mean, it's always that fascinating line of thought whenever we are working with the enterprise solutions as from the agency's point of view. It becomes quite clear that you just have to move with the boring bits as well as educating the subject matter experts that how a flow should work. They get surprised many a times. I mean, I worked with deep banking clients, I worked with a telecom as well. And the most prominent work that I did could be seen at Netgear devices. So any Netgear device that offers a cloud as a service. So that is all done by the team that I managed. And for many years, we've been doing that. And also with the telecom, we work with the rollout of Geo services in India. I was part of the team that created their coverage platform. So that is the beauty of it, that you don't have to learn the intricacies, but you actually need to learn how the function actually will work out. And it could not necessarily mean that you become the subject matter experts, but without understanding of the business itself in technical terms that you're solving for engineers now, and you're solving for people who do understand how telecom dashboard should work. That complexity in itself takes a lot of toll and bandwidth.
It does, yeah. I couldn't agree more.
All right, before we move any further, I want to know the person, which is you, in a rapid fire manner if you are ready.
Oh, sure, yeah. Let's go for it.
All right, what is your favorite go-to pastime?
I would have to say gaming, probably. Yeah, gaming or hiking. It kind of depends on the situation, but I really like problem solving. And then, there's nothing better than getting out in nature and just detaching, especially when you work around tech all day, as I'm sure you know.
As a professional, what is the one sentence or word that you hate hearing?
One sentence or word. I mean, it would have to do with time being cut down on a project, I think.
Okay, your favorite YouTube channel.
Ooh, I like the Y files a lot. You ever check that
Oh,
one out?
yeah, I will, definitely. And any book that you can recommend?
Well, what are you thinking? You think more design specific or
Any
fiction?
book.
Any book? Well, one that really comes up for me often that I find really helpful in design. This was given to me by a mentor when I first started out as a graphic designer. It's
Uh-huh.
called Grid Systems and Graphic Design by Josef Mueller. And it's just excellent. It wasn't designed specifically for web design. It was designed a long time ago, but the principles and the foundational elements in that book I still find useful today.
Fantastic. So, when you wake up in the morning, the first mobile app that you open.
Right now it's multi-timer, actually. This is a new one for me. But I just started doing planking in the morning. So I use
Mhm.
it for that. And for various other things throughout my day, like a Pomodoro timer at work. But yeah, that's definitely been the first and last one that I use each day.
Oh, so your favorite drink?
I would have to go with coffee.
Coffee. All right, I accept that. Sunrises or sunsets?
Sunsets for sure.
You're not a morning person?
I can be persuaded, but yeah, I typically gravitate towards the evenings. I also live out at the coast too, so I get a little spoiled when it comes to sunsets.
Right, so West Coast sunsets, it makes sense.
Yeah.
So, how is life in Portland? I mean, the closest that I've seen is from that joke series Portlandia, which was ridiculous to begin
Yeah.
with by the concept of it. And it's quite laid back if if anything to get out of this. So, what is your favorite night or evening activity? Do you spend it on the beach, or is it a bar or friends or stay home?
Yeah, that's a great question actually. I mean, Portland has so much diversity to it, but honestly enough, the way that Portlandia portrayed it, even though it is deeply satirical in its own right, it is pretty accurate. There's definitely some elements.
Don't tell me that.
Well, something I don't think is like that funny unless there's some truth to it.
Right.
And when I was living in Portland, actually, we did see them film quite a few times. Friends and I, we'd stumble across the sets where they were filming there. But yeah, it's a beautiful city. The people even more so. I miss it a lot, but not too far away, so do like to visit every now and again. But yeah, nowadays my evenings usually are spent at home. Usually working on creative projects for myself, for personal hobbies. Maybe some creative projects for friends here and there if there's time. But yeah, just more of a homebody these days than I used to be.
Do you cook?
I do actually, yeah.
So,
More and
what
more.
is the quickest thing that you can whip up anytime?
Oh, geez, give me some tortillas. I'll make you some tacos. I love making tacos. You can make them any out of basically anything. So versatile, easy, fast. Can't beat it.
It is actually, and that is one of the things that surprised me the most, that there is a perception that people in the West are not as, they can't handle their spices. But once you visit Cal or Texas, that perception is shattered completely because the spices level is actually very high. The chili content, not the other spices, but the chili content is really, really high.
Yeah, I think I would have to be really careful if traveling when eating spicy food for sure.
All right. And so, last few questions. What
Mhm.
is your favorite dessert?
That is a really good one. I would have to say probably donuts. That's the one that I come back to the most. I was gonna say cake, but yeah, I think it's donuts. Any time of the day. It's a great excuse for dessert.
All right. And last question, your favorite holiday destination?
Okay, so seasonally appropriate. Germany for the Krampus Festival. Have you heard of this before?
Oktoberfest, yes. Krampus, no.
Yeah, Oktoberfest actually, that would be really fun as well. Germany any time of the year seems great. But yeah, right before Christmas, they do a Krampus festival. They have a big parade, march through the street, and people wear these big costumes.
Uh-huh.
Kind of like, it's like the dark Santa Claus, and they have big drums and everything, and it looks pretty fun. It always pops up on my feed each year.
Actually, I'm heading to Germany in June
Oh,
26th for JITEX. So we'll be exhibiting there for the 2 days, and it's just the UX bets that we are going to take it up. So this is the first official information, or sorry, first official announcement for our visit. So if you are around Germany or Berlin during that period, please do come to our booth. But yeah, back to the podcast. Okay. So, Germany and
and I went to Japan once several years ago, and that was just a blast. I think any time of the year would be great. I went in the fall, so I think it'd be really great to go back sometime during the spring, during cherry blossom season. That
Mhm.
would be.
But isn't it amazing? I mean, every single time Japan is one of the most favorited destinations among the creative people, the aesthetic, the way they have perceived the art of perfection in very tiny details. The smallest of the thing, they would go and think about how I can make it better. So for any creative individual, that has to be on their bucket list, right?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, we went to tour a garden there, my partner and I, when we were on our trip, and it was really beautiful because the way that they had taken the trees and they had grown and they had used bamboo to not cut the tree and not really like make the tree grow in a specific way, but instead encourage the growth out and span it. So they have these bamboo bracers that they put on the branches all the way down, and they have these beautiful trees just spanning out in all directions with bamboo bracers on the branches, lifting them up off the ground. It's really quite an amazing practice that they have there.
Wow, that's a fantastic segue to the next question, which is not a rapid fire one, but more of a technical version of it. So, we
Mhm.
talked about growing these trees in particular shapes and then helping them grow in whatever organic way they can be facilitated into. Now, coming the same formula or applying the same formula to design systems and products. Do you think that design systems sometimes come in the way of creative expression or
Absolutely.
solution?
Yeah, absolutely. And I love that parallel of tying in. I think just kind of touching a little bit on what you said about designers and maybe creatives getting inspired with Japan is because I think the culture there is very structured. So there's a foundational structure and understanding behind everything that the culture seems to embrace long term. And I think that that creates authenticity and that creates something that is very tangible when you're looking at it. You can understand that work has gone into it. You can understand that the beauty is only there because of the understanding for the beauty and the reason for the beauty from the beginning. And I think that really is what design systems are all about, is building a structural representation of something that will not be containable, right? So it will always be growing, it'll always be expanding, but you have a system of rules that help keep it within a bounding area so it doesn't get out of control. I hear a lot of people reference their Figma spaces is very messy, so like working in a client layout may be very well presented and well organized, but in the back end, everything is chaos, and that's okay. I think each person has their own way of working, but once you get into a larger team, you don't really have that freedom to be able to just have everything just be on one page or span all over the place without any labels. So having that structure behind that system helps it grow and helps it find its own balance and point of relation for everybody in the end.
So, one thing that I can see here is coming out of this discussion beautifully presented, which is it has to be a cultural shift within the organization for the best possible solutions or design systems or in the design culture itself, the organizations embracing the fact that they are working for the users. Second is there has to be a little bit of OCD in every designer to
Absolutely. Yeah,
make sure that we paint between the lines.
absolutely. I think that's part of the trick, in design is finding the little intricacies about yourself and really using those, really like leaning in on that. So I've always been somebody who's been much more on the OCD side. But finding the balance in that, so like not trying to restrict the system itself or the people using it, but rather present a guidance tool for them, present some resources for them to come to and check back in as they're helping build the system out, but understanding that it's organic and it's going to continue to grow and that everybody's experience and everybody's opinion should be part of that growth process.
Do you feel sometimes that the role for UX design entangles with the duties of a business analyst? That you have to not just understand, listen to the requirements, but also be the first person to see how is it going to happen or can be executed whenever the solution or the problem statement is presented.
Hmm. Yeah, it's a really great question and a great point too. Right now in our agency experience, we don't have a BA per se. So we really do work as a team, both internally and with our client team to understand what the problem is we're trying to solve. But at the end of the day, we really do look to our UX team to guide that process. And they do work very hard with strategy and on their own to help define what that means and what is really needed under that surface layer. So even if the client is coming to us saying, this is the problem we're trying to solve, that's not necessarily what we need to be doing in UX or what we need to actually be, the end result actually needs to convey. There's an element of that, but it doesn't need to always be quite as literal as it's originally represented.
So, being a creative director, it's always about not just ensuring the solution is accurate, but also the aesthetics are maintained. The design language and design system which is presented is on point, and if there is an opportunity to scale a new component or deliverable, that is where you come in and guide your team sail through those pointers. So when we are looking at from this umbrella or the thought that design system, as people have always mentioned, is not a one-time job. It is an evolving entity and a project in itself. You can never say my design system is done. It's always going to be
Too true.
something added, one layer and another layer, and then somebody will decide that, okay, you know what, we are going to change the logo and we are going to change the colors, and now we don't want the rounded corners. It has to be sharpened, and the things as they happen over the period of time. So once you are dealing with a large scale design system in larger organizations where the product is going on for say 2 years, 3 years, there is a sense of the design is getting older. People start building apathy towards it. People, even who like it, start calling it outdated and very old.
Mm.
And then comes a point that somebody would say, why don't we redesign this? But it is going to be very expensive. So when the discontention starts, it becomes really heavy for any creative manager to sail through with the new ideas and design. What is your approach when you somebody says that we need to make big changes in the design because we are not in love with it anymore?
Hmm. That is a really fantastic question, and one that I've found myself asking and hearing from others in some capacity more than any other specific client that I've worked with. This system that we work with now is interestingly minimal and also uniquely complex. So the system of colors are a little bit outside of what you would normally expect with a brand. I think it works to our advantage in a lot of ways, but over the years, we've really struggled in small ways to figure out how to evolve the system without ripping too far away from that core branding
Mhm.
that always needs to exist and run throughout the entire experience, both outside of our management in print and the web, or sorry, in print and advertising aspects, so like for social media, but also within other elements of the web. So we manage the client facing or the user facing aspect of the business, but there is also a business side of this for business users specifically that our team doesn't manage. So we always need to make sure that we're staying in alignment with what's expected there as well. And at the end of the day, the system does feel dated at times. So we actually run two systems right now, one for basic web design for the .com pages, and then another for the purchase experience and the online portal. And right now we're going through a redesign of the app experience for that online portal. And it's really bringing up a lot of questions, I think, for the whole team, those of us who are on the project and those who are just kind of witnessing the flow and the process, bringing up a lot of questions as to what we want to do with the web experience once the app is redesigned. So we've done full redesign of the web, which really brought up, this was a few years ago, but really brought up a lot of these questions of how we can evolve the system. And really what we did was lean into the current state marketing approach for big, bold typefaces, really eye-catching, eye-popping colors, but not leaning too heavily into any one color, right? So like really focusing on high contrast and really keeping things simplified and just focusing in on creating promotional moments for the user to come in and feel like they're being personalized to or they're being spoken to in a way that is relatable for them, both as an existing user and as a new user.
One thing that, generally we have done in the past is going the micro release strategy way. So even if so I look at the design, don't like it, but we have to scale on the same platform, I'd say, okay, now let me 2000 changes to it. Then I have something to look forward to, that, as a personal bit of delivery. And then just slip in one thing per sprint, one or two minor tweaks. Then just change the shade of this color with this. So the developer is like, yeah, I can do that. Without anybody noticing. The whole thing is evolved over a 6 months period because the release is going every month. And you are just sneaking in small one CSS change at a time, so that every time that when you look at it, it feels, yeah, this is different than where we started off with. So it's a little bit of microaggression from designer's point of view, but you still get the win in the end, and nobody says, ah, this is old.
It's a really smart approach. And in a lot of ways, it's something that we found success with too at our team. So we do work closely with the client. And one of the things that we will do occasionally is maybe filter in a small color change, filter in a small elevation change. So recently, in the past year and a half or so, we elevated all interactive areas just very slightly with some drop shadows, very intentionally done. So card elements, maybe some buttons and whatnot. And now we're slowly pulling that back, so really staying on top of what's trending right now, in the market and the industry at large, but
Mm,
also just trying to connect with the product team very subtly on the side and push these things through in a way that works for their team, but doesn't compromise the overarching brand.
right. So while we were talking about industry trends and we haven't touched the elephant yet, let's talk about it.
Sure.
Artificial intelligence.
Yeah. It's
And
on the tip
with,
of everybody's
with
mind.
and with a team like yours, the multidisciplinary way of working that you have adopted, and you also mentioned the keyword that you hate is timelines getting pulled back. How does it change the role that you have played over the years? And how do you feel that it is taking us in the future? What is the direction?
Hmm. It's interesting that you brought up that pain point word because I do think that they are interconnected in a lot of ways, and I think that a lot of designers and creatives are experiencing that pressure right now to work faster, work harder. You have the tools at your fingertips. AI is this kind of overarching term that everybody is using right now, but it doesn't mean anything specifically. I think it means a lot of different things to a lot of different people. But at the end of the day, the overarching expectation in the industry does seem to be you should work harder, you should work faster because you have these tools to make it easier for you. And I think there's some truth to that.
Hmm. Do you think that it has impacted the creative output process um, noticeably?
Yeah, absolutely. I would say in a couple of ways. One is that it does allow designers to work a lot faster. If you use it smartly, if you can use it as an assistant tool, which is what I find myself doing more times than not. If you can use it to, maybe cut a few corners within specific programs and get to a solution a lot faster, that can help. But from a results perspective, I think that the main thing that I see oftentimes is the coin term AI slop, you know? So it's not what anybody really wants to see. I think it's probably what we end up seeing more times than not. And if we're noticing it, if we're able to identify that was made with AI, it may be getting closer to the slop portion of it than not.
Even when I say, people are saying that the web design can be done with tools like Framer, or there are tools available with Figma Make, there is UX Pilot, but all they generate is something that somebody has already been there, done that, and you are getting a very generic sort of solution that is nothing unique in that. So as a designer, you have to deliver one level on top of it. So another layer has to be built up so that it looks and feels like it is human made rather than the slop. So does that make our work more challenging in a way that you have the output, which is functional. It looks nice, I mean aesthetically, but you have to now be on top of your game to improve on that.
Right. And I think that's where the UX will never die. You know, the looking at everything from the user's perspective from the very beginning to the end, whether or not you're making it, whether or not you're pumping it through a machine that's putting it out, it's really important to understand, like you mentioned, what the initial problem that we were trying to solve was and if it's being conveyed. And at the end of the day, the UI is always just there to support the UX. It's never there to be the foundation itself. So I think
Right.
we find ourselves in a tricky situation if we are just, kind of prompting websites into existence and we're forgetting, why certain things matter, why we're putting drop shadows on things, why certain cards get larger when they're hovered over. I had a great example brought to me recently of a full web page build that in no way looked like it was done by AI. It 100% looked like somebody had built it out and taken the time to do so. And it was made in a matter of minutes with a few prompts and tweaks, and it was pretty mind blowing. But when I was using it, and it's just a one page, right? It's not interactive, but when I was using it, there were small interaction cues and prompts, and everything kind of responded to my mouse as I was hovering over it, which to me felt that's where I started losing it, right? I started thinking like, well, this isn't even interactable. This doesn't even look like a button, but it's behaving like a button. And I think those are the elements you're speaking to, where it still takes the human to go back into the design and tweak it and give it that final breath of authenticity.
And let's be spitting the truth here. Never in the history of design, anything that is presented to the client in first go is okayed without any changes.
Yeah, I think that's safe to say.
And second is to generate a design directly, the client has to define the requirements specifically, and they don't do that.
Also true in most cases.
So, what does it leave us with? Communication people who are communicating with the clients, stakeholders, and AI. And then we have to be the human layer on anything that goes out to be the gatekeeping, monitors, quality control, and the exceptionalists that you are delivering something which is top of the shelf.
Yeah, it's a lot of pressure. I think that right now what designers are experiencing, maybe more than a lot of industries, is the pressure to wear so many hats, and I think that right now more than ever being a jack of all trades is a benefit. And understanding understanding how to, relate to people from various different perspectives, but also how to communicate with AI, as you mentioned. That's a big part of it, getting the message across not only from communicating with your client, but also communicating with whatever platform you're using, large language models, whatever it may be, to get that result. So that thread of connectivity stays throughout the entire project.
So it has been a long journey for you, starting from communication designs to marketing and digital marketing to UX, and now leading the UI and creative director position. What advice would you like to give to yourself, say 10 years ago or 15 years ago?
Hmm. That's a good question. It's probably one I should think about more frequently, but I would say I would actually pivot onto the jack of all trades thing. I think 10, 15 years ago, I found myself in that spot, really feeling stretched thin and understanding a little bit about a lot. and not really knowing where or how to apply that. And nowadays, that actually is a strength. I really do think that it is. I see, job postings nowadays asked to understand motion design and 3D design and web design, and all of these different platforms that you wouldn't normally expect to need to know when applying to a very, very specific type of role. But being able to understand at least a little bit about every application is helpful. And you can speak to that slightly in an interview. You can, pick it up and learn more very quickly, as most of us can if we really apply ourselves. So the advice really would be is to continue to explore little bits of many things until you find something that really inspires you, that makes you tick, and then pour yourself into that, and never stop learning. I think that really is important.
It's not just for the 15 years ago yourself, but that should apply to every individual on the planet. Because if we start to rely on what we know at any given point, that means that we have just ended our careers right there and then.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right. It was a pleasure to have this conversation and heart to heart. I believe that we talked about a lot of parallels. We talked about different ways of functioning within the organization on the technical side and creativity. I thank you once again for joining our show, Michael. And it's good to have you on the show.
Oh, thank you so much for having me. It's been an absolute pleasure.
All right. With that, it has been the end of our show for today. So, everybody who has still tuned in till now, just remember to like, follow, subscribe, and share our podcast. And stay tuned for more enlightening talks like this to come your way. And don't forget that we will be at GITEX Berlin on June 30th and 1st of July. So, if you're around, show up for good surprises. Have a wonderful day ahead.